From the outside, everything seemed fine. A steady job, a long-term relationship, and a routine anyone would call stable. But I knew I wasn't happy. I'd always been a dreamer, full of plans and ambitions. But I felt like I was living to please everyone but myself. Laura had been my partner for almost 3 years, and at first, everything seemed perfect. But over time, I began to notice small behaviors of hers that made me feel increasingly diminished. I let it slide, thinking it was all in my head, until it all began to become a burden, impossible to ignore. The turning point was when Laura started making me feel guilty about my own dreams. Every time I talked about new projects, she found a way to belittle them, saying I'd be better off content with what I already had. When I mentioned that I was considering moving to a new city to pursue new opportunities, she reacted as if I were abandoning everything valuable in my life. Little by little, I began to understand. It wasn't love. It was control disguised as concern. And the more I gave in, the more trapped I felt, until I realized I was living someone else's life, not my own. The worst part was realizing how certain people around me seemed to feed off my downfall. You know that kind of friend who only shows up when everything's going well? Well, when I started isolating myself and declining invitations, few noticed. Laura? She seemed increasingly distant. While I tried to gather the strength to start over, she seemed more eager to escape that difficult time. I found myself surrounded by silence, unanswered messages, ignored calls, and that hurt more than any professional rejection. It was as if the world was telling me, "You failed, Gabriel. No one wants to be around someone who's no longer interesting." This was the phase where I began to doubt myself, and I swear there were nights when I thought about giving it all up. I thought about leaving, disappearing, starting over somewhere else. But there was something inside me that wouldn't let go. A memory from my childhood of my father saying, "Son, life knocks down whoever it wants, but only those who choose not to get up stay down." That phrase stuck in my head. And little by little, I decided, even though I didn't have the strength, that I wouldn't accept that end to my story. I decided to start slowly, setting small goals, getting out of bed early, drinking coffee, going for a walk. Simple things, but they gave me a sense of control, as if I were taking control of my life again. With each small victory, a part of me was reborn. I began studying content I'd always been interested in, but never had the time to explore. I searched for free online courses, devoured motivational videos, and read personal development books. And something curious happened. As I dedicated myself to improving, I realized how much I'd lost myself trying to please others, always trying to live up to Laura's expectations, my peers' standards, my family's opinions. For the first time, I was focusing on myself, my goals, my desires, and that void that had been consuming me slowly began to fill with purpose. It was during this process of self-discovery that the idea for my project emerged. I'd always been passionate about photography, but I treated it as a hobby. I decided to pursue this passion. With the little money I had left, I bought a used camera and began exploring the city, capturing simple yet meaningful moments. At first, no one understood. Some mocked me, some criticized me, but I didn't stop. I created a website, posted my work every day, interacted with those I liked, and sought to learn more with each click. And slowly, what was simply an emotional outlet began to transform into something much bigger. Over time, my page gained visibility. People I didn't even know began commenting, sharing, and praising my work. What was once a personal refuge became a true community of support. Each new message of encouragement fueled my desire to keep going. For the first time in a long time, I felt valued not for what I could offer others, but for what I was capable of creating with my own hands. This gave me the strength to keep going, even on days when memories of everything I'd been through tried to bring me down. And it was during this period that something magical happened. My first professional opportunities arose. A small cafe asked me to do some promotional photography. Then a local clothing store hired me to photograph their products. Little by little, I began to establish myself. It wasn't easy, it wasn't quick, but it was real. I began to earn my own money, to build my independence, and above all, to rebuild my self-esteem, proving to myself that I was capable of much more than I'd ever been led to believe. With each small contract I closed, my confidence grew. I remember the feeling of receiving my first paycheck. It wasn't much, but it meant freedom. It meant I could start over. The most incredible thing was realizing how people began to see me differently. Friends who had drifted away, family members who had judged me. Some returned with words of surprise and admiration. I, who had been seen as a failure for so long, was rebuilding myself from scratch. And that gave me an indescribable sense of pride. But don't think everything was perfect. There were times when insecurity hit hard. Some projects went wrong, clients disappeared. I spent sleepless nights worried I wouldn't be able to pay the bills. However, instead of sinking again, I used each setback as fuel. The pain I felt served as a reminder of how much I had already overcome. I couldn't let one or two failures get me down, so I got up, took a deep breath, and moved forward with more strength, more drive, and a determination I didn't even know I had. Little by little, my routine changed completely. I woke up early, full of energy, eager to make things happen. Every small step forward was celebrated, and I learned to appreciate each step of the journey. I was no longer that guy drowning in regrets, but someone in constant motion, always striving for improvement. Interestingly, those who noticed this transformation most were precisely those who had previously criticized me. They saw the change in my eyes, in my demeanor, and some even reached out to me to find out how I had managed to turn things around. And that's when I realized something fundamental. My overcoming wasn't just about me, but also about inspiring others. I started sharing my journey on social media, writing short posts about what I'd been through, the difficulties and the victories. The response was incredible. People I'd never met started messaging me, saying I was living proof that it was possible to bounce back. I, who had once been disbelieved in, was helping others not give up on their dreams. Over time, I solidified this new version of myself. Days that were once marked by doubt and anguish were now filled with goals, small achievements, and a sense of purpose I'd never experienced before. I began to realize that everything that had hurt me in the past had become the fuel for my transformation. Laura's contempt, the sidelong glances from acquaintances, all of it converted into strength, proving I was capable of much more. The most interesting thing is that amidst all this evolution, Laura tried to reappear. After months of no contact, she started liking my posts, sending messages with flimsy excuses, and even leaving messages, trying to justify what she'd done. I didn't respond. It was surreal to think that the same person who made me question my worth was now trying to reconnect precisely because I was on the rise. I no longer held any resentment, but I also had no room for the past to return. I had evolved, and there was no point in regressing. I remained focused on my goals, each small victory showing me that the path I was on was the right one. I began making new friends, reconnecting with my family, and connecting with people who truly rooted for my success. It was as if a veil had fallen from my eyes. I could finally distinguish between those who truly wanted the best for me and those who were only there for convenience. And for the first time in a long time, I felt surrounded by people who pushed me forward, not drained me. Every day, I was surprised by how much progress was possible when you stop trying to please those who don't deserve it. I began investing in projects I'd always neglected, explored new skills, and was recognized for my efforts in environments I'd never imagined before. The confidence Laura had destroyed was rebuilt brick by brick, but now based on concrete achievements, on self-pride, no longer on the approval of others. I was, finally, the master of my own story. I won't lie, there were days when old thoughts tried to pull me back. Memories of moments with Laura would surface out of nowhere, sometimes accompanied by that nagging doubt as to whether I'd truly done the right thing by cutting it all off. But all I had to do was remember what I'd experienced, how I felt in that relationship, to understand that I couldn't romanticize a period that nearly destroyed my mental health. The pain was there, but now I had control over it, not the other way around. Over time, my total focus became my personal development. I started exercising, improved my diet, and studied new career paths. My body and mind were stronger than ever. And you know what? People who previously underestimated me began to look at me with respect. I received job offers, and opportunities arose without me having to beg. The feeling of having freed myself from that toxic relationship was liberating. I had not only survived, I was thriving. On one of those days when I truly felt in control of my life, I ran into an old friend who had alienated me during my time with Laura. He said something to me that has stuck with me ever since. "Gabriel, I've never seen you so well, so light." That had a profound impact on me. It was confirmation of what I'd already been feeling. I was finally living for myself, without constraints, without manipulation. It wasn't just appearance, it was a true transformation that came from within. And that's when I understood something I might never have realized if I hadn't gone through all of this. Sometimes life knocks us down so we can rebuild ourselves even stronger. I realized I wasn't a victim of history. I was the protagonist of my own overcoming. I learned to choose my battles, to value my peace above any relationship, and most importantly, to never again accept less than I deserve. Every tear shed had become fuel for my personal ascension. Today, looking back, I feel neither anger nor resentment. I feel immense pride in having gone through what I went through and emerged stronger. Laura tried to destroy my confidence, but it was precisely this difficult period that helped me become a more confident, more selective, and much more aware of my own worth, Gabriel. The freedom I feel now is priceless. I walk with peace of mind, with my head held high, knowing that everything I've achieved since then was the result of my own courage and perseverance. If I can leave one message for anyone going through something similar, it's this: you will overcome. No matter how low you've fallen, there's always a way to get back up, bounce back, and live a full life with peace and purpose. Every hardship is a lesson. Every disappointment is a chance to know yourself better and grow stronger. And when you finally achieve your own freedom, you'll realize it was all worth it. I'm living proof that it's possible to be reborn after chaos.